It's a great pleasure to be here today to share a little bit about the work we do at WIPO. So indeed, WIPO stands for the World Intellectual Property Organization. We are a specialist agency of the UN. And it's a really big organization, and within this huge organization we have a small division that looks at the interface between intellectual property and traditional knowledge, but also traditional cultural expressions, which is the other side of the coin of traditional knowledge, and also genetic resources. And so in the division, our primary stakeholders are indigenous peoples as well as local communities. And there is a normative aspect to the work, and the member states of WIPO are currently negotiating international legal instruments to protect traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions as a new category of intellectual property, because as many of you may be familiar with these questions, but we have copyright, trademarks, designs, and so on, and cultural expressions, if they're contemporary and original, they would fit within, for example, copyright protection, so they could be protected. But a lot of traditional cultural expressions are in what we call the public domain. So there is a gap in the protection, and the normative work at WIPO is looking to fill this gap. So work is already quite advanced, but we also have quite a bit of a practical aspects to our work, which is to offers practical solutions for indigenous peoples and local communities to fulfill some of their objectives, which are often the protection but also the promotion of the cultural expressions. And working closely with communities, one of their big concerns is around the misappropriation of their cultural expressions and their traditional knowledge. And you can have misappropriations, you can find in various fields, in the entertainment industry, pharmaceutical industry as well, but also in the fashion industry. And this is a line of work that we currently have in our division, and for the past 2 years or so, we've been working actively on this field. And misappropriations in the fashion industry, I'm sure you've witnessed them, and Marco gave already some quite, striking examples of how that can happen, and in the media you have a lot of examples as well. And there are a lot of companies that may misappropriate knowingly and in bad faith, but a lot of companies, they will just use elements of communities' cultural expressions as inspiration. They don't mean to really appropriate and do harm to the communities, but there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of lack of knowledge really as to how to engage with the community. And so this line of work that we have really aims to build understanding. Yes, no, too much. Yes. Okay, there we go. To build understanding and trust between two universes that are fundamentally very different, so that of indigenous peoples and local communities and the fashion companies. So I'm going to focus on that. This is a very specific, and concrete aspect of our work, but of course there's a lot more to it, and I'll be happy to discuss in more detail, later on. So while we were looking at these questions, we thought it'd be a good opportunity to use WIPO as a platform to bring in these two sides together, so indigenous peoples and fashion companies. And last year in November, we organized a dialogue on indigenous peoples' traditional cultural expressions and fashion. And we invited local communities and indigenous peoples to come and explain what is really the meaning for them of their cultural expressions, and how some uses can be offensive or inappropriate. And lots of them actually were saying, well, we're happy to share and we're happy to collaborate, but it has to be done in ethical and respectful ways. And then we also invited various fashion companies, and they came and they shared some of their good practices, for those who had already collaborated with communities, but also, what is their reality and why sometimes it can be challenging to really take the time, to sit it and discuss with communities, but because they have like very fast production cycles and so on. And we had also a third panel which looked more in depth at some of the collaborations. And as part of this event, we also presented a document that we developed last year in WIPO. So this document was developed with, in consultation with indigenous peoples, fashion companies, experts in fashion, and also various experts from academia. And basically, it's called Draft Steps when Considering the Use of Elements of Indigenous Peoples' Traditional Cultural Expressions in Fashion. And to those who have looked at and already are familiar with this area, the 6 steps that are detailed will be like, well, this is common sense, this is obvious, right? But actually, a lot of companies that were there and saw this for the first time, they were like, this is so useful, and we will try and follow this. So the steps in a nutshell are, the first one is that companies should research the cultural significance of the cultural expression that they would like to use in a collection or in a design, so that they make sure that they do the due diligence check, and that in that way they develop a deeper understanding and appreciation for the culture, and they're less likely to use it in offensive ways. The second one is to conduct relational research. And the thing with indigenous and local communities is that we have the communal element, right? So we are not dealing with one designer or one artist, but with a community. And for a lot of the communities, cultural expressions belong to the community, or they see themselves as the custodian of specific cultural expressions for the next generation, right? And for fashion companies, it can be tricky, like, okay, so, it's a community, but who should we talk to? And can this person from the community, do they have the authority to speak on behalf of the community and authorize the use of a cultural expression? And, the person you need to talk to will be different from one community to the other. So it's important to do the research, the relational research, and find out, are there specific community protocols that will indicate who's the right person to talk to and so on, and to find out, are we talking to the right person? The third is to build relationship and trust, and this can take time. And this is a challenge for large fashion companies because, as I said before, sometimes, the collections have to come out when they come. They don't have necessarily the time to go and build these meaningful relationships. So perhaps, one way would be to work with communities for a capsule collection that is not necessarily linked to a specific point in time, if that's possible. But learning the indigenous ways, building these forward-looking relationships will be a key element from the perspective of the communities. The fourth is very important. It's to reach an agreement. At the end of the day, we're talking about contract types of agreements. They don't necessarily need to be in a written form, but they can be. And this has to do with under what terms and conditions will the fashion company be able to use specific cultural expression. And they need to reach that agreement with the legitimate holders of the cultural expressions with a full understanding of the terms of the agreement on the part of the community. Giving acknowledgement and attribution will be an important part also of a collaboration. And finally, sharing the benefits is also important. There can be various ways in which benefits can be shared. These can be financial, of course, but not only. We think mainly about the financial angle. The financial angle can be important for communities, of course, but other things can be important for them. For example, the fact that they can participate in the creative process for a collection, be part of the team, the part that there is access to education programs, or anything really that is important to the community. So it's important to take the time again as part of the agreement to see what is important to the community and how would they like to benefit from the collaboration. Now, we're currently consulting, so we have this document obviously in like more detailed terms. The document is not available on the WIPO website, but I'm happy to share a copy. For those who would be interested, I'm happy to send you a copy. We're currently consulting. The objective really will be for this year to fine-tune the document, to bring it to a point that it really reflects the aspirations of indigenous peoples and local communities, but is also realistic from the point of view of the fashion companies. So we're consulting both with fashion companies, the industry experts like yourselves. So would we really welcome any comments you may have. And yeah, we'll have a second event in October next year, and we're hoping that a number of fashion companies will be ready to endorse the steps, and hopefully bringing us in the right direction. Right, so I'm going to stop here for now, Diego, but I'll be happy to continue this discussion informally later.